The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Get my hang of it here on the program on what audiences like to go ahead and catch on a regular basis on this Broadcasters Podcast. Even last week's episode about talking about the movie study, or the study on teenagers and young people in general. Teens and, young people in general, 10 to 24 years old, and their taste in movies wanting to be more platonic, less sex-driven. There was that part. Well, the other thing they also mentioned in last week's UCLA sex study on teens and screens was the superhero movies a bit much. Or as what I like to call, superhero movies have gone mid. Okay? I'm going to tell you like this. If we're going to be honest with each other, among the superhero movies that were out here this year, the one that really stood out to me, well, let's put it like this. The ones that did the best were the ones that made the most money. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, it is the top grossing superhero box office movie this year, $683 million so far worldwide. And then, if you have to take other franchises, well, Barbie's first. Again, that movie's already made over $1 billion, $1.441 billion for the year. And then Super Mario Brothers, number 2 movie so far. And these numbers 1, 2, and 3 are not going to probably change for the rest of the year because no one else is going to beat it. Super Mario Brothers, $1.361 billion this year. But when you look at some of the movies that should have gone into that 500,000, 750,000, maybe up to that $1 billion mark because of who's behind those studios. Well, let's start off with, let's go down the list here. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I think it was in April. It wasn't in February, I think it was. And that movie underperformed. It's the number 7 most watched movie this year. And that movie got under $500 million. $463 million, by the way. Then we go down, and then what? We got to go to Indiana Jones, number 10 movie overall this year, just a domestic. Keep it going down. Transformers, number 12 most watched movie this year in the box office. I'm looking for the superhero movies. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'll put it like this, okay? We're not going to go through the numbers. But The Flash and Blue Beetle performed less than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What other movies beat it? Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom surpassed The Flash and Blue Beetle. That surprised me there, okay? The Taylor Swift Eras Tour movie beat The Flash and Blue Beetle. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, by far the worst performing DC movie, I would imagine, of all time. What a horrible performance. DC movies tanked across the board. Aquaman is the last chance for DC to have something resonating, a chance that superhero movies on their end are going to do okay. They're not. Sad. But Aquaman, I don't know what their projected turnout's going to be on Christmas week, but they are positioned now. Not on Wednesday, by the way. So we know Thanksgiving, Christmas, they always put movies out on Wednesday. But there's been a change where Aquaman is now going to come out on Friday. Therefore, if we're looking at the schedule coming up now, so that means Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will go out on December 22nd. Actually, no, but that is moving, all right? I don't know if that is the Friday or not, but still not good for them. Yeah, because Christmas is on Monday. So yeah, the Friday before it's going out then. It was actually supposed to go out on December 20th, but they pushed it back 2 days because of where things are right now, and that's where they have to be. So there you go. And there's other movies coming out. And there's at least some things to watch coming up here over the Christmas holidays. And the holiday season is now upon us. That November 1st has already passed. Mariah Carey has said it's time, and we're here. And the worst holiday shopping going on right now because there's just not much momentum anywhere. Obviously, people don't want to go and shop this year. That's another thing we have to worry about. But when you look at what's going on for this year and the box office, not a good year at all for superhero movies. And Marvel's getting a real teardown by their fans and we've talked about it on the program. That's the problem, is that I actually brought it up a few times. We went back in March, and I remember looking at stories where it was all going and falling apart, right? And we knew it. The movies this year have struggled. And I don't know what you do next to go and get this all together. I mean, we had one thing when it came to all the issues with the actors strike and the writers strike, and all these different movies are going to be pushing back a bit. We knew about that part. I mean, we talked about DC quite a bit when they talked about their reboot last year and then going into this year, but it's not going well. I mean, listen, they're taking the DC universe is taking a bath right now and just going box office bust right now in a very horrible way. It's sad for them, but that's where they're going to be stuck at. When you look at what the movies are going to be coming up this year, at the end of the year, you're not seeing much except for the fact, okay, the last Marvel movie of the year, The Marvels, is next weekend. It's not predicted to go that well. I think they said $70 million. $70 million? How much did Captain Marvel make? Let me look at that. How much did that make last time they went around and did this, right? The movie should be making a whole lot. Now, it made, let's see here. Let me pull this on the numbers and get the actual figure here of how well it did, because it did not do well. Now, it did pull $1 billion in 2019. So now we're back, and the sequel of The Marvels is here 4 years later. And as I said, we're not looking to get too much of presence where we're going to see the Marvels really do really well. At the moment, there's a lot of things going on about box office predictions don't suggest superhero fatigue. Right now, there's some reports saying that the movie could get a $45 to $50 million opening weekend. Wow. That is horrible. But it's fact. And people don't really realize that. The early box office projections are 72% worse than Quantumania. So Marvel and their momentum has gone down significantly. Okay, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Volume 3, which did fine. No question there, it was fine. But everything else, and then the Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, which is not even part of the normal Marvel package, that's the Sony package, right? So people are talking about how the Marvel's box office projections are way lower than expected. So I don't know what you do. But I mean, the trailers for it doesn't look as well. I mean, you're trying to get the superhero audience now to go ahead and buy into a completely all-female superhero trio. You're not including any of the normal aspects of like any of the Avengers. They're not even around. I mean, none of your bread and butter, no Spider-Man, no Iron Man. So what do you do now? The people are they're anxious about what's going to go on. How many people are going to actually go to the movie? Yours truly, of course, is going to go, because that's the movie I'm going to go and catch next weekend. I mean, not against me. If the movie's a train wreck, I'm going to be okay about it. It usually is that way, okay? So now we have this, and now we're at the point where what happens next and where can things go? Because when it comes to superhero movies, are people really up and at it? Are they really anticipating and excited about what's going to be coming up? Because you got to ask yourself that question. Now, we don't see the release schedule coming up for 2024 yet. Well, actually, I can see it now. But if I look at what we have coming up into next year, if I go ahead and keep going into February, into March, by the way, when you're looking into next year, you don't see a lot of superhero movies on the docket yet. Dune Part 2 is coming up March 15th. That's the first thing I see that might be into the intellectual property that a particular genre. A Ghostbusters sequel on March 29th. Deadpool 3 is May 3rd, 2024. And I am looking here. Ballerina, the female John Wick, is June 7th next year. But I'm not seeing any. Okay, I see Captain America Brave New World is July 26th. And that's actually the first of the DC or Marvel movies at all that are coming up. Next year will be very light on that. We'll have a new Venom sequel on July 12th, 2024. Now, we're going to remember what movies are going to be coming back that we don't know yet that could be brought in, and some of these movies might still get moved around because the actor strike has not been completed yet, but we have an update on that. We'll talk about that. It could still be done pretty soon. And I'm looking here. Transformers 1 is September 13th of next year. Another Sony Marvel film will be November 8th next year. And that's it. Like, there's other movies coming out. Actually, Den of Thieves 2, Pantera. Ooh, I'm looking forward to that. That's good. Spider-Man's Beyond the Spider-Verse, that will be next year. But that's it. Are you kidding me? The Ark. Oh, no, the Ark and Aardvark. I thought they said the Ant and the Aardvark. Don't do that to me. I thought a movie, the Ant and the Aardvark, was going to be a movie. I'm going to go watch that. I'm first in line. What are you talking about? But yeah, that's what we got right now, is that there is a lack of superhero movies next year. And what we're getting right now is what is left of the superhero movies that are just kind of falling apart. And the only superhero stuff you're going to have right now is kind of watered down and maybe not as potent on streaming. When it comes to Marvel, that's all over on Disney Plus, Loki and other things like that. But now on the DC side, no, because Max doesn't really have that much going on in terms of new projects like that, like the Penguin and some other projects not going forward as far as I know. But yeah, your superhero stuff is going to be relegated to streaming. So when they decide to go and bring it back in, next year, or actually in 2025, most likely, if we're getting to that point, the question is it going to be, it's going to do well enough that superhero movies can come back and have a renaissance? Like, it did have a nice run for about 15 years, something like that. I mean, we've had a long run, and maybe it is time for other movies to go ahead and take their spot here, where there will be other intellectual properties that'll be rehashed, revisited, recycled, and that's what they're going to do. So the superhero movies take a back seat. We get a breather. It's not a bad thing. Because when we're looking at what we're getting on the way out of 2023, yeah, it's been pitiful. Mid. Just about all of them. The Spider-Verse? No. The Guardians of the Galaxy saved itself with the Rocket Raccoon storyline and his backstory. Otherwise, all the other movies have taken a dump. Not performing even close to what they should have been, for a lot of different reasons. And Marvel has gotten, of course, the most talk because they are leading up into everything. And the first story that really brought everything up, that really got everybody all worked up, is Variety. Man, they put out a story as scathing. Tatiana Siegel put it out here. I've been seeing a lot of reports on it. Crisis at Marvel. And they go across and they talk about how Jonathan Majors, there's backup plans for him because he was the character Kang that was introduced in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. The Marvel's reshoots, reviving original Avengers now, is also being talked about, and more issues revealed. So we're going to go into this Variety story, and they're going to go into everything that's going on. Now, one thing I got to say, too, I also see there's a story out that apparently before Lisa Marie Presley passed away, she actually slammed the movie Priscilla and the script being vengeful and contemptuous for Elvis's depiction before she died. Yeah. I actually was going to go watch that movie until I started reading about the fact that Priscilla, whoever the actor is that plays Elvis, is no Austin Butler. He's a facsimile. He don't even have like the voice down right. And that the Elvis Presley Enterprises refused to let any of the original music, be put in the movie. So, yeah, that's that. So Sofia Coppola, she's become the movie version of Kitty Kelly. Now, you might be a little bit too young to even remember who Kitty Kelly was. She was basically this scathing gossip writer turned novelist, right? And she would write just scathing pseudo biographies on all these major stars. The one I always remember the most is the story about Frank Sinatra, which I did read, and it was a shame how much crap she put on him anyway. I mean, Frank Sinatra is not a saint by no stretch, but she really slammed Frank Sinatra for whatever reason, and all his affairs and all his marriages and all this stuff. So now here's what we learned. Variety reports that this past September, a group of Marvel creatives, including the studio chief Kevin Feige, were in Palm Springs for the studio's annual retreat. Now, since 2009, Disney's owned the studios, they remade the entertainment business in its image. But everybody this occasion was angst-ridden. Everyone at Marvel is reeling from a series of disappointments on screen, a legal scandal involving one of its biggest stars, and the questions about the viability of the studio's ambitious strategy to extend the brand beyond movies into streaming. Now, first of all was Jonathan Majors. The actor has been poised to carry the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, instead is now in a high-profile trial in New York for domestic violence charges. Played Kang in the Marvel movie Ant-Man and the Wasp. He was also Creed's opponent in Creed 3 earlier this year. Yeah, the character Kang the Conqueror. Now, the actor insists he's the victim, but the damage to his reputation and the chance he could lose the case has forced Marvel to reconsider its plans to center the next phase of its interlocking slate of sequels, spin-offs, and series around Kang the Conqueror. This sounds like Ezra Klein all over again. I mean, not the same story, maybe not the same in terms of integrity, but still not good for either of them, and not good for these studios. So in Palm Springs, in this gathering, executives discussed backup plans, pivoting to another comic book adversary like Doctor Doom, but making shifts would only carry its own headaches. Majors was already a big presence in the MCU and has been positioned in the franchise's next big thing in this season of Loki, particularly in the finale, which airs on November 9th, and steps up Kang as the titular star of a fifth Avengers film in 2026. So we get the Avengers in 2.5, 3 years. So one deal maker talked to Variety that said Marvel is truly fucked with the whole Kang angle. And this deal maker saw the final Loki episode. Quote, and they haven't had an opportunity to rewrite until very recently because of the writer's strike, but I don't see a path on how they move forward with this. Yeah, the writer's strike screwed them up. And now there's the issue with the November release of The Marvels, a sequel to the 2019 blockbuster Captain Marvel that made $1 billion worldwide, but has been plagued by lengthy reshoots and now appears to underwhelm likely at the box office. So this is a big turn of fortune for a company that has enjoyed a nearly uninterrupted string of hits ever since independently producing its movies with 2008's Iron Man. Then you culminate it with the $2.8 billion success of 2019's Avengers Endgame, a high watermark for the studio that has earned nearly $30 billion over 32 films. That's a great run. How long can you sustain that kind of traction? And that's where we're looking at right now. Even with these issues at bay, you have to understand there's going to be a point where these movies are going to go by the wayside. You can't sustain this kind of growth. You can't sustain this kind of success. There's going to be a lull. And if there's a break in between, that's not a bad thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. The reason all these movies did so well from 2008 on is because the CGI, the effects, the budgets are so good now to be able to produce the right kind of superhero movies. They can still be done. They're just not being done as well as they have been. And there have been some flaws to them in the last couple of years. And replicating that kind of phenomenon is never easy. The source of Marvel's current troubles can go back to 2020. And that's when COVID ushered a mandate to help boost Disney's stock price with an endless torrent of interconnected Marvel content with the studio's Disney Plus. Now, I could have told you that. In 2020, sitting here in lockdown, we saw the effects of all this stuff where Disney Plus needed to launch with all their guns a-blazing and every intellectual property destroyed. By the way, we see nothing about Star Wars in sight at all for movies. Even though we might have Ahsoka and Mandalorian again and all those kind of things going on. Right. But it's all Disney Plus. And by the way, Disney Plus isn't making enough money. They're at a loss. Meanwhile, the Disney movies have been putting out instead have gone at a loss. Have been tanking. I can go back to that release schedule. I can go back to that box office and look at the movies that did really bad this year. Disney has had a wash week, just pretty obvious. Along with Ant-Man and the Wasp, The Little Mermaid underperformed. And did that movie even make half a $500 million? It did, 568 total. Just under 300,000 domestic. But with all the money they put behind it. Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, 10th. And then you keep going down. Elemental, underperformed. That overall has made just under $500 million. $487 million to this point. Then you got to go all the way down to number 27, Haunted Mansion. Oh, that thing really tanked. Underperformed like crazy. $114 million total. And I don't even remember, the production budget, $157,000. $157 million. Excuse me. $157 million. Damn. That is pathetic. Haunted Mansion tanked. By the way, you're putting the movie in July. You didn't put it in like October. Maybe we would have had a better chance. Then Evil, let's see, after that, I'd have to go down all the way to, is there anything else? Well, if there is, I don't see it on the list, but that's what we have in the Disney movies that came out this year. Meanwhile, that's all they put out, and everything else, Disney Plus. And is Disney Plus really doing that well right now? I mean, when you think about it, how many subscribers do they have so far? That's the real question. Like, are they really pulling enough money right now to sustain themselves? Currently, as of the third quarter 2023, Disney Plus has 146.7 million subscribers worldwide, down 11 million users, or 7.3% down in subscribers. Ouch. So all that work, all that content, they might have gotten over 100 million subscribers, but they're losing people. They're not staying around. And, you know, what's the subscription price for them? It's not even that much, right? What is the price now these days? I haven't even looked at it. Unless you buy the Hulu package, right? Oh, $13.99 a month. And it's gone up. Right? And by the way, that just happened. Where Disney Plus was $10.99 and now $13.99. Yeah. Bad. Not good. This is about a month ago. And then Hulu's no ads tier has gone up from $14.99 to $17.99. All that's pretty sucking, man. Pretty bad. I don't know what you do about it, but, you know, all these streaming services with less content, Netflix going up to $23, not helping. It's not doing well at all. And how much of it is Disney pillaging through and rummaging through all the Marvel content they can get and just crank it out? That's another issue. Disney wanted to go and rehash some of their movies to be live action. They cranked out Star Wars content like crazy. Cranked out Marvel content like crazy. And to make the point here, Eric Handler, who's a Wall Street analyst who covers Disney, he says, quote, the Marvel machine was pumping out a lot of content. Did it get to the point that was just too much? And they were burning people out on superheroes. It's possible. The more you do, the tougher it is to maintain quality. They tried experimenting and breaking with some new characters like Shang-Chi and Eternals with mixed results. With budgets as big as these, you need home runs. And by the way, some of that experiment was fine. Listen, Shang-Chi, great movie. Shang-Chi was really good. Eternals, flat. It was flat. It was kind of mid. So the Marvels are coming out November 10th. It's going to struggle to get the ball past the infield. The movie already cost $250 million, and it sees Brie Larson reprising her role as Captain Marvel. Now, the highest estimates are $75 to $80 million. And remember when Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was kind of mid last year? It was $185 million debut weekend. So now, it's not just DC that's feeling the brunt. Marvel now is feeling it badly. We didn't expect it to be this bad, but yes, we are. Now, the Marvels unites Larson's heroine with two superpowered allies, Tiana Paris, Monica Rambeau, and Iman Vellani's Kamala Khan. But instead of seamlessly building on the success of Captain Marvel, this move resulted in 4 weeks of reshoots to bring coherence to his tangled storyline. And then the director, Nia DaCosta, had to begin working on another film while The Marvels was in post-production. The filmmaker moved to London earlier this year to begin prepping for the Tessa Thompson drama called Hedda. And so a source familiar with production says, if you're directing a $250 million movie, it's kind of weird for the director to leave with a few months to go. Right. When the director's not even staying around to complete the project. Even the post-production. Oops. Now, Marvel has also seen its release date move back twice, swapping places with Quantumania, which was deemed further along, and again when the debut shifted from July to November to give filmmakers more time to tinker. And it didn't help. In June, Marvel, which traditionally only solicits feedback from Disney employees and their friends and families, took a holding a public test screening in Texas, and the audience gave the film middling reviews. Oops. The other thing, too, is that, all this switching around to the movies and when they were going to come out, like, Ant-Man is, about a year behind? Same thing, like, remember, when we had that whole thing with some of the movies going on that, COVID was still kind of like a little bit ramping and just being apart, and then the box offices were just kind of, the studios were still shuffling their feet about the exhibition windows, about putting more emphasis on streaming, and now they're backtracking because they've realized what a mistake they made. They're all having their hand and fist right now. The actor strike, the writer strike, all this is coming to the head, right? They're in dire straits, all of them. These big corporate conglomerates are all hurting right now. And then there's a part about the effects and the movies being done and not being done well and being sent out. So when the credits rolled to the world premiere of Quantumania, shock rippled through the Regency Village Theater in Westwood, California, over shoddy CGI. The report was there were at least 10 scenes where the visual effects had been added at the last minute and were out of focus. A power broker who was there at the movie saw it. It was to say, they said, quote, I've never seen anything like that in my entire life, my entire career. Everyone's talking about it. Even the kids of executives were talking about it. The schedule swap with Marvels and Ant-Man put a squeeze, pushing post-production up by 4.5 months. Marvel films are known for coming down to the wire, given Feige's ability to film the runway and land a plane that way. But this level of unfinished and unprecedented would be noted in scathing reviews when the tentpole, with a $200 million budget, opened 11 days after the premiere. Critics weren't the only ones dismayed, fed up with 14-hour days and no overtime. Marvel visual effects workers voted unanimously to unionize in September, sparking an industry-wide trend. Right. We talked about that. Bad working practices for the artists, the folks that are creating the visual effects, the CGI, to make the movies look good. Talk about how where Disney was incensed that quality control on their Marvel productions was plummeting, particularly on the TV front. There was a visual effects log jam for some time with visual effects for TV shows, on Disney Plus, like WandaVision and She-Hulk Attorney at Law, inserted after their streaming debuts. And by the way, Who was overseeing the studio's physical production, post-production, visual effects, and animation? Victoria Alonso. She was fired this year. And Bob Iger, when he comes back as CEO for Disney, was apoplectic about the visual effects troubles with Marvel. And so Victoria Alonso was fired, and they cited the reason for her was an abrupt firing as an unauthorized role as an executive producer for the Oscar-nominated film Argentina 1985. She was busy promoting her art house project while Rome Burned certainly didn't sit well with Disney's leadership. These are a lot of big problems, but this Variety article is throwing all this under the bed right now for everything that Marvel's doing wrong. Now, Alonso is a scapegoat, and the She-Hulk visual effects issues, which I don't think the visual effects would have helped She-Hulk attorney at law at all. It's not just a lack of oversight of development on script development. The original arc of She-Hulk, Tatiana Maslany's transformation as the star into the Hulk character didn't take place until episode 8, the next to the last episode. But after Marvel's Brain Trust watched footage, it realized the scene needed to happen in the pilot episode so that audiences could see more of the character's backstory early. The visual effects team was tasked to fix the mess in post-production. Oh. You didn't think you wanted to get the turn Hulk in the first episode? That's odd. I mean, the point of the show, right? And at the same time, Marvel was bleeding money, a single episode of She-Hulk costing some $25 million, dwarfing the budget of a final season episode of Game of Thrones. They're not going to make back $25 million with their subscriber list. That's not happening. At the time, making, maybe $100 million? Well, what is it? 100 million subscribers at $10 a month? Yeah, they're not going to make it. When they're putting $25 million on like a 10-episode series of She-Hulk? Whew, that's just wrong. She-Hulk special effects, when they put this out as a series premiere in August 2022, at the El Capitan Theater, foreshadowed what was going to happen with Quantumania. Special effects were out of focus in multiple scenes. And there were signs the flood of product is leading to people to tune out. Well, there it is. It is too much. Listen, I'm not suffering with the fact that, I'm saturated with Marvel content or Star Wars content is because I don't have Disney Plus. And better off that I don't. Because it doesn't tarnish my movie experience. Like I can imagine if you're watching Loki and WandaVision and She-Hulk, all the Marvel stuff you're getting right now, and Captain America, imagine if you're getting all that right now, are you up and at it to go watch the Marvels? Like, seriously, are you really that interested to go and watch it? Because I'll tell you what, if I was a Disney Plus subscriber watching all the Marvel stuff that's mid, I probably wouldn't put any money down to go watch the Marvels either. Let's be honest. If I didn't have my Regal Unlimited subscription, I will be on the fence if I would go see this movie. I probably wouldn't. This would be one of those I would probably skip. Because when I look at the release schedule now, if I had to look at what movies I would go and watch now without a pass, there's a couple still. Like for the rest of the year, I will probably go ahead and tell you this. I would absolutely go see Napoleon at the theater, November 22nd. That's absolutely going to be on my list. The Bike Riders, I would probably go see that on December 1st. I'm going to go see Silent Night, which is a Joel Kinnaman thriller. And I probably would not pay for it. But with the pass, I would go see it. I would not probably see Wonka if I didn't have the pass. Aquaman, maybe. But I would absolutely go see the Iron Claw. The story of the Von Erichsen professional wrestling. I would absolutely go see that and pay for that. And Ferrari, I'd probably go pay for that too on December 21st. Pretty much. Okay, back to Marvel. So much damage right now. So Joanna Robinson is co-author of the New York Times bestseller MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios. She's a writer and podcaster at The Ringer. And she says, quote, I'm not prepared to call it a permanent fall, but the numbers that go out on Marvel podcasts, Marvel-based articles, friends who do Marvel-based video coverage, and all these numbers are significantly down. And that brand means quality, right? The quality is suffering. That association is no longer the case because there have been so many projects that have felt half-baked and understood. Yep. See, the other thing that was made a mistake is that Disney wanted to make Marvel an assembly line. And you just can't do that with superhero movies and superhero projects. It's a bigger problem. Now, Feige's pulling the plug on scripts and projects that aren't working. One is the Blade reboot. Mahershala Ali signed off for the eponymous role of a vampire. Things look promising for a 2023 release date, but the project has gone through 5 writers at least, 2 directors, and 1 shutdown 6 weeks before production. And the script permutations, according to a person familiar with the show, says the story at one point morphed into a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons. Blade was relegated to the 4th lead, a bizarre idea considering that Mahershala Ali was already on board. And Ali was ready to exit over script issues. And then Feige went back to the drawing board, hired Michael Green, who wrote Logan, to start anew. And speculation now is the studio is looking to make the film, slated for 2025. The budget will be less than $100 million. What a mistake. Now, I never watched all the Blade movies, the trilogy. I never watched it. And I should go back and watch it. I never did. Sorry. I just didn't have a chance. It was just at the time. But yeah. And what's this going on that we're going to go and have it where it was going to be narrative led by women and filled with life lessons? Who's, changing the original concept of the Blade story? It's like Snow White. If you're going to make Snow White, make Snow White. If you're going to make Blade. But Iger's publicly acknowledging the downside of a Marvel TV glut with diluted focus and attention. So they're dramatic moves. And one of the moves is full of desperation. Let's get everybody back for an Avengers movie. Really? So you would go ahead and revive Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, who were both killed off in Endgame, to be resurrected thanks to the powers of things like the multiverse. But if they wanted to do that, it wouldn't come cheap. Robert Downey Jr.'s upfront salary for Iron Man 3 was $25 million. So, with Jonathan Majors, he was arrested in March, and Disney executives insisted they could afford to play a wait-and-see game because the Avengers: The Kang Dynasty is not expected to begin shooting until early 2024. But then Majors was dropped by quick succession by managers and publicists. He's still a client at WME, but there are other alleged domestic violence victims of Majors cooperating with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, so he's going to be mired in lawsuits. And who knows if he's going to make out of it. Because we don't even know what's going to go on with him, or if he's going to actually get out of it, or if it's going to be done. Like, if you're going to do anything, you might as well just recast. The New York judge on October 25th denied Jonathan Majors' motion to dismiss the case, so the actor will stand trial in late November. Now, Marvel is already considering moving away from a Majors-led phase because of the box office performance of Quantumania, which, by the way, so if you're going to tell me that the movie was like the standout and the reason to watch the movie was the villain and not the protagonist, ooh, that's not good. People didn't want to go watch for Ant-Man. They watched for Kang. And even I heard that, so I was like, oh yeah, Kang, he's great. Kang the Conqueror. Uh-oh. So the one movie that really did do well was Guardians of the Galaxy, which did do well, $845 million worldwide. But remember who directed the movie? It's the guy that runs DC Studios now, James Gunn. Paul DeGarabedian from ComScore made the point that with Marvel, it used to be as close to a guarantee as you can get, so going in on the budgets made sense. Guardians here was a bit overlooked in how successful it was, but that James Gunn and Chris Pratt and star power becoming important, Quantumania making under $500 million is viewed as a disappointment, and these overreaching expectations are a result of so much success over the years. Right. It was going to slow down. We know that. And then there's the part where Marvel and Disney were able to get back the original properties to be able to use with their sale, with the acquisition of 21st Century Fox, that they were able to get the X-Men and Fantastic Four back under studio control. And fans are hyping up Deadpool 3 next year, which reunites Ryan Reynolds with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and a reboot of Fantastic Four slated for 2025. But that's it. So Feige could reimagine the X-Men franchise, bring that back. And with the writers back now, Marvel's talking to the writers about bringing the X-Men back to the MCU fold. But again, not going to be something right away. But all that is a cluster. When you read that whole story right there, what a complete cluster of all of it. It's bad. Now, I had other stories I was going to bring up about the report, but everybody talked about it. We talked about the projections for Captain Marvel. That's just bad too. All of it's bad. All of it's bad. And everybody talked about it. Like, there was a lot of stories we saw. The Verge actually put out a story in Marvel we no longer trust. And everybody took a dump on Marvel this week. All the media press did. And so now, that's what's happening. One other story that came out from Screen Rant, a story that says about the crisis was explained by a Marvel executive 5 years ago. And so there were plans. Somebody was actually calling out and say, hey, watch out, Marvel. So Marvel executive producer Louis S. Desposito spoke about this 5 years ago, long before the studio was in crisis. Speaking of how its limited capacity prevented it from making one-shots. Quote, we're just so busy. Disney wants us to do it. We want to do it. And I keep telling them I'll do it on the next film, but I keep breaking my promise. Marvel being overloaded by Disney's streaming mistake. And we're seeing what Marvel's trying to do to kind of try to do some real damage control, but it's not working. Now, among the releases we have coming up, Captain America Brave New World is slated for July 26, 2024. The Thunderbolts is December 2024. Then Blade is Valentine's Day 2025. Fantastic Four, May 2nd, 2025. Avengers Kang Dynasty slated for May 1st, 2026. Avengers Secret Wars, May 1st, 2027. That's the slate. But they got a lot of work to get themselves back to where they need to be on all that. And the worst thing was, the report that they might bring the Avengers back. Wow. How bad can that be? That is a story that you would think that shouldn't have come out. Because it's not going to do any good. I mean, it probably will do good, but like, people are going to really crap on Marvel for doing that. And pulling that off. Now, Aquaman 2 also had its own issues as well. With Amber Heard and how much she's being appearing in the movie. And all the work they had to go and do to get that movie all put together. They talk about the story that Amber Heard had very little chemistry with Jason Momoa, which is why they wanted to go and drop her off the movie. And Walter Hamada director James Wan actually had to go out to the decision about cutting Amber Heard's role in the movie, and he had to go and answer those questions. She has a reduced role in the sequel as compared to her significant supporting role in the first. There's a report that the direct.com put out that Amber Heard's character Mira will become a mother in the new heir of Atlantis in Aquaman 2, and that's been confirmed following her baby's appearance in the sequel's first trailer. And with this sequel being the final in the DC Extended Universe before James Gunn and Peter Safran's new universe begins, the fans' reception to Heard's inclusion will be difficult to ignore. And by the way, we also noticed that Superman and Lois is ending at the CW with season 4, and the DC era on the CW ends. So where is DC content going to be on streaming? In the meantime, we're not going to have much of that. And as for Marvel, well, go look for it on Disney Plus. Oh, plenty of it. Let's see how well it does. Let's talk about the strike. The actor strike continues right now. SAG-AFTRA, latest report from Variety.com says they're waiting for a response from the Alliance of Motion Picture TV Producers as AI and other numerous issues remain unresolved. So there's a holding pattern right now on a counterproposal by SAG-AFTRA. Agreements around AI remain elusive and frustrating to both sides. Manchin believes the union is focused on too many what-if scenarios involving fast-changing AI technology. Actors maintain AI as an existential threat to their livelihoods, fueling much of the strike. And the work stoppage was July 14th. We're at 112 days, the longest strike against TV and film producers and SAG-AFTRA's nearly 100-year history. Sources close to the situation said there was frustration from the AMPTP side that SAG-AFTRA raised the number of issues this week seen by management as late additions to the demands, while the union side countered that these issues have been on the table all along, but were low on the list of priorities until now. So back to where we were with the writer's strike as it was finishing up in September after 148 days. So that's where they are right now with that. But a story came out from The Wrap that makes the point about once the actors get back on board and the deal is signed, actors will be scrambling to get in front of a camera to finish shooting movies, prioritize publicity obligations for projects, finish before the strike started. With the box office sagging, big budget projects, studios need their stars to be championing films just as much as they need actual content. But what takes top priority, publicity or production? And The Wrap talked to several people in the film industry, saying that studios and publicists would have to get creative with balancing publicity obligations with shooting once the strike ends. There's going to be all kinds of creative negotiation. Everyone's going to play ball. It doesn't benefit either party to not fulfill those obligations. And that's the part they talk about there. The Wrap says there's only 2-3 weeks left of shooting most of the 2024 slate and are not too concerned, a studio says this, about having to push back any additional release dates. The desire is to get cameras rolling by the end of the year at the absolute latest. So that's the latest on the strike. We're still waiting. Maybe before the end of the year. Maybe it's a good Christmas gift. The actor strike will end. 112 days. They stuck to their guns, just like the writers. And you have to. No choice. So I'm going to move in the radio right now because there is a couple of stories that I just took and put together that really just bother me. So a few weeks ago, I talked about Odyssey, which is the second largest radio company in the country. And what we have right now is an issue that New York Stock Exchange, most recently delisted Odyssey because they had to go and get their stock price back over $1 a share. And then Odyssey tried to do a split stock. So from the Philadelphia Business Journal, Jeff Blumenthal reports, Odyssey's effort to appeal the New York Stock Exchange's decision to delist its stock was unsuccessful. As a result, the audio content providers continued lower share price. So in a Monday filing with the SEC, the move by the New York Stock Exchange to delist the stock will become effective November 10th. Odyssey, under the OTC market at AUDA, will continue to trade over the counter under the symbol AUDA. So yeah, it's off the New York Stock Exchange. It's now a pink stock. It's a penny stock. And that's indicative of what the radio industry is. Make no mistake about it. Now, supposedly, some things are going good for Odyssey because some of their stations are performing very well. I mean, they have quite a few stations that are doing pretty well, but the stock price went below $1. Odyssey right now, the second largest radio company in the United States, trading at 43 cents a share. Damn. And the others we have in the market, Beasley Broadcasting, 78 cents a share. iHeart, they're the big bucks. $2.32 a share. They're not making any money. They continue to go ahead and hemorrhage staff, hemorrhage resources, and continue to automate more and more. Does anyone realize that, if you want to have social equity, you want to have diversity, equity, inclusion, you want to get content that's out there for all audiences, that's where radio was supposed to be. It's a dying medium. And no one is doing anything about it. And by the way, the other thing on top of the story, besides the fact that the stock price is so bad, they're also, Odyssey, in debt. They're trying to restructure $1.9 billion in debt and gain financial breathing room. And a Friday SEC filing There are discussions with lenders by Odyssey to restructure its debt. This is what iHeart goes through as well. With their debt notes and all this crap, the company provided updates for debt maturing March 31st, 2029, extending the grace period for defaults and interest payments on these notes. They can't cover the interest payments on the notes or cover the debt. The grace period now, an interest payment of $18 million due on September 30th will now be on November 29th, if not paid off earlier. So Odyssey is on the verge of bankruptcy. They have to keep their finances in order or else they're going to go bankrupt. This is all the American radio companies. All of them. They make no money. 1% or so, and that's it. They're not bringing in a new audience. They're not serving the public with music or music radio. They're saturating all the market with a boatload of advertising. Mostly their own advertising, their own brands that they have. Pitiful. But this is common. But I mean, no one's talking about this. Odyssey is going to go bankrupt. Let's just call it right now. iHeartRadio just came out of bankruptcy. And the remaining debt they still have on their books, it hasn't gone down. Like, do I need to go ahead and look at a story about iHeartRadio and what their debt is right now? I mean, if I go back right now, it's still $5.75 billion. They got out of bankruptcy in January 2019, and their debt was reduced from $16.1 billion to $5.75 billion. Now, the question is, is it doing any better? Well, back in March, there was a talk about how iHeartMedia really didn't have a plan to get and whittle down the $5.4 billion in debt on the balance sheet. Well, right now it's 5.75. Well, 5.41 was 5.73. Oh, so there's a little bit of a dip. Huh? A story from Inside Radio talked about this. That back in August of this year, iHeartMedia retired $80 million of debt, repaid $430 million to lenders since the second quarter of 2022, reducing the amount of outstanding debt from $1.45 billion to approximately $1 billion. But that's not all their debt. That's outstanding debt. And it's just $500 million. There's still $1 billion left of the current run. Now, as of this story, August 10th, 2023, the debt has gone down from when they restructured at 5.75, went down to 5.4. Now it's 5.2. Yeah, they might be making a little bit of a dent, but a couple $100 million, they're still being allowed to run with that much debt. I mean, okay, their assets make enough for them to go ahead and stay fluid, but like seriously, radio doesn't make any money. And this is allowed? It's just sad to see all of this. And in the meantime, okay, podcasting, YouTube, other platforms are taking away their business. But, of course, Bob Pittman can't help himself but just trying to put, rose-colored glasses on, right? While audio consumption lines continue to blur as more listening is done online, Bob Pittman, the CEO of iHeartRadio, says that podcasting and broadcast radio are complementary businesses. Don't compete at the same time. Wrong. He says both are companionship mediums, quote, and both keep their listeners company just as at different times and locations throughout the day. And the natural synergy between these two mediums gives us a real advantage in podcast content creation, promotion, marketing, and advertising sales, as you can see in our consumer engagement, revenue, and profitability metrics. Podcast usage doesn't come at the expense of radio usage. Yeah. What money are they making on podcasting from their own end? They said a 12% improvement. Of what? I mean, why do I waste my breath about radio? It's a medium that I love, and it's like these corporate folks just ruined it. Ruined it for me, ruined it for everybody else. I mean, thank goodness I got podcasting, man. At least I got this platform here to enjoy. But, man, they just really pissed me off. What can I say? That's the show for tonight. We're going to leave it there. We'll keep an eye on see if the strike's going to do any different. You see if there's any change. This weekend, I'm going to watch the Marsh King's Daughter with Daisy Ridley. I don't know. I'm going to watch that over Priscilla. Like I said, Priscilla, I don't know if I'll watch it. If it's still available in a couple weeks, maybe. Just to watch a train wreck. But Sofia Coppola, what were you thinking? What were you thinking putting out this movie and putting this out here and just really essing the bed and just really just pissing people off about this? Like, do you realize what you did and what you're doing right now as a result of all this? It's sad to see that, but that's what you did. And now look what's going on. Now we're going to just see this whole deal of, criticism for this movie for what you did. You want to go and crap on Elvis. Is that going to be a good idea? Listen, there's enough Elvis fans out there, myself included. It's not a good idea for you to do this. Anyway, come back for another Broadcasters Podcast. Until next week, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.